This session will be recorded. If you have any questions, please raise your hand. You can use this reaction icon and choose one of the logos. It doesn't matter. If we can see if you push the button, and we can unmute you and you can ask your question. Yeah, and as Botton mentioned, please leave the camera on because it makes this even more personal. So that's it for us and the festival itself. Let me introduce our first presenter. Actually, we will have two presenters today, 30-minute sessions and 10-minute Q&A after each session. Yeah, and our first presenter is Bálint Végh, and we'll be talking about find your product market fit. Bálint is a marketing professional who's been making and breaking products for more than 10 years. His vision is to deliver products on a global scale that customers love and use, and he likes to talk about customer satisfaction too much. So, Bálint, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. And then I share my screen and set up the presentation. In the meantime, let me just press the right buttons. And here I am, and you can see my topic. Today I will be talking about product market fit, and that's almost as simple as the picture you see in front of you. So but of course there are some complexities, and I'm trying to go into detail, don't worry. And actually, you will not only see what I think about product market fit, but I will also discuss the long journey I made trying to get there. Sometimes I did find that product market fit, sometimes I failed. That's part of the story. I will explain some of the failures and some of the successes I had, and we'll try to go into details what was the key for the success. And then of course I would like to share a tool with you which would make your journey easier than mine. So that would be my key purpose for today's presentation. And in the first part, you will hear about what product market fit is in detail. And once we are on the common ground, then we'll go into details with the tool and discuss how you can succeed. And of course, we are here, as Oli mentioned, in online format, and that limits the presentation itself a bit. I was preparing for a webinar, which actually would make it impossible to see your faces, and I would miss the feeling that you will be laughing at my jokes. But of course, you might say that's business as usual because my jokes are simply bad. But anyhow, I really like the interaction with people. So please do ask questions. There is a 10-minute time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. But if something is really pressing, just shout, I will answer it. And let's jump into our topic. What is product market fit, and who is this guy talking to you? Of course, I haven't talked about it much. Zoli had a few nice words of introduction. Thank you for it. I just want to add that in the last more than 10 years, I've been working on product, mostly in the telco sector. I almost had my grand slam, meaning I didn't work for Telenor, but I did work for all the other companies in telco, in Hungary at least. And I worked in Luxembourg and Germany too, so had some international exposure. Also, I'm a professional beekeeper, on the other hand. That's another type of product that I'm experimenting with now. And actually, that's also helping me understand new markets and finding new product market fits. But now back to the real question about product market fit. And actually, I can tell you when product market fit is not happening. That's easier to tell compared to when it's really working. And there's a nice and long quote from Mark Anderson, the founder of Netscape. And actually, you can feel when product market fit is not happening. And there are a couple of reasons how you can feel it. Of course, customers aren't getting value out of the product. There is no word of mouth. Usage isn't growing. Press reviews are, to say, not the best. And sales cycle is long. Deals are not closing. You're struggling with your product. You exist. You have customers, but there is somehow not too much momentum in your product. And that's the situation lots of us feel. You don't have to be startup for that. My stories will not be from startups. My stories will be from grown-ups from large-scale multinational companies where we struggled with the product, where you would think we had tons of customer data to rely on and still not finding the real solution. I would borrow some of the thoughts of Dan Ozen. As Google said, stand on the shoulders of giants. That's what I do with the theory. I do interpret his views here. So what is product market fit? You can see you have a bunch of target customers. There are a lot of them. And they have underserved needs. It can be anything. And of course, you as a company have your value proposition, feature set, user experience, and the fit between your value proposition and the underserved need. That's the product market fit. When you tap on a potential where people are buying your product. And another quote from Seth Godin this time, that you can motivate people to buy your product in multiple ways. And you can find great sales momentum by impacting their behavior through pricing and many other methods. But that's not what you are looking for. You're looking for satisfying the need and making it an automated working machine that brings you new customers, not through being the cheapest on the market, although, for example, Walmart does excel in it, but you might not be the next Walmart. So I would show you some other ways to go around this problem. And of course, and again, Dan Ozen, the core idea is pretty simple. It is target the right customer segment, thoroughly explore their needs, and develop a proposition. And yeah, that sounds right. He mentioned 6 steps. I made it into 3, but it's really the core of lean product development process. You just have to make it right. I know it's a very difficult task. It's very simple written, but if you've tried it on a product, most of you are product managers, so you know what I'm thinking about, that can be pretty challenging. So let's talk about the stories. Let's talk about my stories, how I got there, what my journey was. And of course, it's a very interesting question. How do I find the product market fit? It's another question. How will I know that I found it? What are the KPIs that I need to measure to know that my product is successful? I will answer that soon. So how do you do that? You try and you fail. Of course, that's one of my first babies as a product manager, actually as an assistant product manager back in 2008. Yeah, I'm old. So that's a long time ago. And we were working in telecom on new solutions that can bring new revenue outside of the core voice and internet and boring things. And actually, the demand was not coming from the customers. The demand was coming from our boss sell more SIMs, so SIM cards. So we had to find a solution how to sell more SIM cards. And we didn't look for what customers needed. We looked for where can we put SIM cards in and how can we push those devices to the customers. So we were thinking and thinking and thinking and found out, okay, home security or more home automation and smart home, that could be an idea. Because of course, you need a SIM card, you need to function, that's great. So the product promise is fulfilled. So we went to the vendors, looked at different vendors, also did our product research. Unfortunately, not in the right product category, because we were trying to bring out a smart home solution and we were researching home security. And that's 2 different markets. and that also didn't help us to get the good insights. But of course, we didn't give up because we didn't know we should. So we went on with piloting. I personally delivered in a pickup 400 devices to a little town next to Szolnok and gave it to the customers. And they tested and gave us feedback. And we went to their home, looked at how they used it, ticked all the things, except for the test was for free. And the end product was not for free. So what is good enough as a free product might not be as good if you have to pay for it. That's another learning we got around the way. And yeah, and we had a huge sales machine, that's telecom, 10,000 people, all wanting to sell products, only not incentivized to sell anything else than SIM cards. And if you know a SIM card or a phone is easier to sell, why would you sell a home automation solution or smart home solutions? That's all signs of failure that we missed, and the product was out of the market in 3 years with 2,000 customers at tops. So I really like the quote of my boss there when it was out of the market and he had to say something to the press, and he said that product was ahead of its time, and that was the problem. So I don't know whether it's really true, whether it was ahead of its time or if there was no product proposition at all behind it. You can tell. And another story, another failure, another company. This time, let's go to the Reds, and I talk about the Vodafone example. And it's at the time I was responsible for the commercial management of prepaid segment, consumer prepaid. You know, top-ups when it's not a monthly fee, but you top up a certain amount, and then you can talk until there is a balance left. And it's also telling that my position was commercial manager and not product manager, and I had the products with me. That tells the focus of telco companies at that time. I hope they changed. I don't know whether they did, but the sole focus of telco companies at this time was to squeeze out profit from the customers by tweaking the tariffs so that they can spend more with us and well, not improving too much the experience. So we faced the situation when the nice everlasting telco tax was introduced. And of course, the management told us that's pretty simple. It's 2.5 forints per minute on your tariff. Just put it on, let the customers pay for it, and we're done. And at that time, we were talking about 45 forints per minute. That's a lot. That's an awfully lot in the era of almost free calls now. And we were putting on top of that some extra money, and that was really, really painful. And you might think we knew the customers, and we had tons of customer data available. We knew how many minutes they phoned, when they phoned, how frequently they topped up, from where they topped up. A great data warehouse with lots of insights, but we missed the key point of the proposition that prepaid customers will not allocate more money to their phone budget simply because you're charging more. Their balance is fixed because they have 2,000 forints in a month to have phone calls, or 3,000, not more. And if you charge more, they talk less or they leave you. These are the two options they take, but they won't just get the cost. So I didn't research, but I was somehow feeling something in the back of my mind that it's not good. I went to the management and I told them, we already have such a high fees. What if we just decrease the fees, go with 3 forints less instead of 3 forints more? We just give to the people. It's a strange message. It's a new message. It's at least something that will have a boom on the market. Let's try that. And that was my scariest 10 minutes in the boardroom. They laughed at me virtually very loud. And it was canceled. And I had to make the raise, and it was a failure. We lost tons of money on that because, of course, people didn't want to pay the tax instead of us. So that's a failure. But just to have an inspiring story of myself as well, I didn't just mess up. Sometimes I also did good things. And that's from the point when I was developing mobile applications as a product owner. It was a pretty exciting story, although it's government related. I know that must not be the sexiest industry for all, but the government has tons of valuable data for its citizens. It just sits there waiting for somebody to discover it and make use of it and make it available for the citizens and make their life easier. So it's a great mission. We had money, we had the tools, we had access to those databases, and I think we created a couple of good things, and this one application was one of them. Its purpose was to help the employers register their workers. They were all temporary workers who worked for them on that day, maybe for a couple of days. It's typical construction work, typical harvesting in agriculture, those types of jobs where actually the original procedure was that you either forgot it or put it on post-its and you gave it to your accountant And in some days, it was transferred into the system with tons of mistake, the fine, and of course, lots of people were on the gray market that have my employees registered, not getting any people who visit me from the tax authority market. And we did our research with the accountants, and we did our concept development with those people who used it, and we developed an application that decreased the time of the registration from 10 minutes to 1 minute, and right on spot, on the field, if you have mobile internet connection, you could do the registration. It was very simple. It tracked with a push of a button. You could send everything to your accountant, all people at the same time. It was scanning your documents. It was very, very quick and very smooth. And actually, it just worked. And it tapped on a customer need because, of course, half of the employers wanted to just make it quick and efficient and without mistakes. And the other half just got the tool that when the tax guy was approaching from the other end of the road, they could register all their people while it was getting here in those 200 meters. So benefit, win-win for every customer type. And it was flying. In the first couple of days in the B2B app marketplace, it was in the top 10 in Hungary, a top 10, and it's a niche application. And at its peak, it was hundreds of thousands of downloads and very, very good reviews. And I was really proud of it. And I think what we had right here was really thoroughly understanding that customer need that was on the market and being able to cover the whole range of entrepreneurs, the compliant ones, the not so compliant ones, the accountants, even the tax office was enjoying its benefit because it got the registered customers and it decreased its customer center call time because the majority of the people were calling to register those people. So it was really a win-win. It was really a nice story, and I really enjoyed being part of it. Now let's talk more about the tool once we are through my story and what is the best feedback. As you can remember from the last story I mentioned, the best feedback ever is the market always wins. So when customers say shut up and take my money, that's when you get your product market fit. And just to quote, there is no KPI nearly as accurate as having purchases. People vote with their dollars, in our case with their forints, but that's almost the same. And what if there was a way to make your existing product, not a new product, not a greenfield product, but an existing product, find the product market fit, even if it seems not working now? What if it just all could start working? What if there was a pattern? And what pattern I'm showing to you now is the example of superhuman. Some of you might know the topic, some of you might know the story. I also included the link to the whole story that I'm discussing here with a bit of Emarsys flavor now. I'm happy to share that link later as well. So first, of course, you need to find the North Star where you can measure your success. NPS is a good start because it talks about customers and how customers are satisfied with your product, but still that scale from 1 to 10 and deciding whether 8 is good enough or just 9 and 10 are good enough, it's a little bit shaky discussion. So I also thought about it myself. Why don't we just use NPS? Why should I stick to another measure? But this one is more accurate, more precise, easier to answer, and it also taps on not just simple likes or dislikes, but the feelings of the customers, the attachment to your product. And the question is, how would you feel if you could no longer use the product? In our case, how you would feel if you no longer could use the Emarsys marketing automation platform? You have to give a very easy answer. You would be either very disappointed, somewhat disappointed, or not disappointed at all. And a base rule by Sean Ellis, who tested it on more than 100 companies, including LogMeIn, Eventbrite, Superhuman, and tons of others, was if 40% or more of your customer base says very disappointed, then you are at your product market fit. Then you have almost half of your customer base being absolutely enthusiastic about your product, and it's connected to emotions. For me, saying I would be very disappointed to use an application, there are a few of them. I would maybe miss a couple of them, somewhat disappointed, but very disappointed. That has to bring me some value. And there are a couple of steps you need to take once you decided that this North Star metric is good for you. Do a simple 2-minute questionnaire. It consists of 4 questions. I will show you what those questions are, and you have to analyze that. Based on that, you have to update your ICP with ideal customer profiles that you have, and have to focus on those customers who are really enthusiastic. I will tell you why it's important, and I will tell you what the disadvantage is if you focus too broadly. Step 3, now you know who your ideal customer profile is, and marketing spend is the easiest to steer in a very quick amount of time. So quick reaction, focus your marketing activities there. And step 4, start tweaking your backlog. That's something already midterm. Of course, on the backlog, things don't happen overnight. That's also a symmetry for some good features at some point. But you have to tweak your backlog, and you have to focus on that very disappointed segment and deliver for them. And the last step is trying to think about how to grow that segment who would be very disappointed, who is in love with your product. And these are the 5 steps I'm going to get to a little bit more detail. And the questionnaire is very easy. The first one is your North Star metric. How would you feel if you could no longer use the product? And the answers that I just showed you. And the second one is a tricky one. What type of companies you would think mostly would benefit from Emarsys services? So what is the ideal company where the most value is brought by Emarsys? That's an open question. The third one, what is the main benefit you receive from Emarsys? Another open question, but I think pretty easy to answer. And the fourth one, the evergreen, how can we improve the customer engagement platform? How can we improve our product for you? As I said, and you can see it, maximum 5 minutes questionnaire, and how we planned it. We are a B2B business, but this one also works B2C. And the example that I'm taking it from is also B2C, but it does work for us as well. It's sent out to the Emarsys customer base, and all customers who onboarded more than 6 months ago, so they could feel the pain or the love already, and then who are not in cancellation, because that's not a love relationship already, if you are already in cancellation, and of course some revenue targets which are a bit more confidential. Second step, update your ICPs. You learned a lot from this questionnaire, start using it. Focus on those people who said they would be very disappointed without you. They are your high expectation customers. Those are the high expectation customers who would like to go beyond normal effort to help you develop the product, because they rely on it. It's the brightest part of their day if they are using it, and you rely on them. And you have to see how they describe the ideal company, which will eventually be themselves, as an ICP in the second question. And you have to tune your marketing activity to those decision makers who are mentioned in the second question, to those types of companies who are mentioned in the second question. And that brings you already an uplift in customer satisfaction, simply because you are bringing in the right customers. And also there are some hard decisions in step 3. Once you focus your spending on the customers who would really love your product, there is another phenomena. You have to say no to a couple of customers. You have to say no even if they would pay you much, because they just don't match your product. Even if for some reason, at the moment of enthusiasm, after a good sales pitch, they think that actually they want to buy your product, you can see and feel that they are not a match, and please don't give up the long-term gain for a short-term money incentive, and tell them no. It will be better for them. It will be better for you. And if you tell them alternatives that they could use instead of you, that's even better, because then there will be a relationship, even though it will be not your customer. And step 4, you have to create a product backlog and start developing your product. And we will know what our key differentiator is based on the next questions, based on question 3. And in question 3, the most named differentiator of those who are in love with your product, that's your key differentiator. And we want to further strengthen the relationship with them. And of course, they will mention a couple of other things that are important for them. Even if they are in love with the product, they would like to develop, their business is developing, they have demand, and you just have to serve them even more. Don't be satisfied with them being in love with you. You want to make it an eternal love. So you have to dedicate half of your backlog to satisfying that customer group still, even better. And once you are done with that, comes the last step. And of course, you have to try to grow the group of customers in love with you. And that's the last step. You look at the somewhat satisfied group. That will be a pretty large group as well. And they are usually really liking your product, but there are a couple of blockers built in your product that make their life difficult. And there will be a couple of them who like the same things in your product as your lovers, let's say so. And you can convert them if you solve their minor blockers. So the other half of your backlog should concentrate on those customers where you have any chance to convert them to loving customers and solve their blocker issues. And done, your backlog is already full. So I don't give you any more advice because there is no more place on your backlog to fill. That the only thing is, I talked about hypothetical love of the customers, which they declare through a questionnaire. But there is one more way a customer can declare love to your product, and that's retention. Because that's one thing to say that I really love the product, and that's another thing to keep paying for that product. And that's the real proof. Once you have good retention, then you have proof that customers are loving you. Once you lose customers, once it's an empty bag where you pour marketing money and customers are flowing out at the bottom, you're missing something. So with this, I will finish my presentation. And in a brief summary, I would like to mention that the product market fit is really the fact that you found what the customers want, and when you trigger the behavior in them, not through pricing, not through other incentives, but through giving them real value. And how you can get there is asking the right questions, finding the right user segment who is in love with your product, trusting their voice, trusting their advice, building your product on them, focusing on them with marketing activities, and turning your backlog into their direction. And once you're finished with that really hard task, try growing your business by persuading other customers who are on the edge of being obsessed with your product. And if you do that, it's pretty hard. It's lots of discovery, lots of research, lots of effort put into that, but I think it will be worth it because I could also feel myself that after so many failures, I could tap into a success story using these methods. At that time, unintentionally, now I'm using it a bit more intentionally. So thank you very much for your attention, and it's up for questions.
Thank you, Bálint. So if you have any questions, just click reactions and choose one of the logos from there, and I will unmute you. And actually, I have one question. Maybe it's a silly question, and it wasn't the point of your presentation, Bálint, but you mentioned that, so where is this 40% coming from? You mentioned that it's better to use this approach to identify the ICP rather than using different KPIs. But in order to be able to say that 40% is, so if you have 40%, then you have a good product market fit. You still need other KPIs to decide where this boundary is, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, actually, on the 40% itself, as I mentioned, that 40% is based on Shonaris's measurement of 100 companies, so it's quantitative already. It shows, of course, he was not only measuring the amount of people answering that, but also the sales curve, when the sales curve is ticking up, actually, and when it's reaching a good momentum. And he found that it's in the range of 40%. I would say you have to strive towards 40%, but there are some other KPIs as well. Just as I mentioned at the end of my presentation, retention is one of them, being able to retain customers. And in terms of startups, you have to retain more revenue than you are losing actually, because that means that you're not wasting money on marketing and losing on the other hand. That could be another. But there is a question and raised hand.
Hi, sorry, that will be a pretty dumb question, but what happens if the group that you're researching in is not able to decide whether they need that product or not? So there will be a false research.
Well, actually, I think yes, there will be customers who cannot decide. That's the beauty of market research or customer research. I didn't mention I came from quantitative market research. That's my origin. And if you ask the right amount of people, simply the sheer mass of responses will guide you in the right direction. So if you have one customer and you rely on that one customer, yes, that can be tricky. But if as a rule of thumb in market research, I would say over 50 responses starting to be good, over 100 responses, that's already something you can start basing your answers on. Of course, all depending on the sample size, but mass will bring you solution for that.
Yes, thank you.
Hi. So first of all, thanks for abolishing the view that telcos are money-hungry giants. I always knew that they are the good guys, but you mentioned that retention is key. And how would you decide the cadence of like remeasuring this, satisfaction and disappointment?
Well, actually, if we think about retention, I think it's finding why the customers are leaving you. That's the key as well. You have to have that exit interview or exit questionnaire with your customers. You have to understand them as well. And of course, I really hope that you were measuring retention already when you were not finding your product market fit. So you have a statistic to compare. You will see the trend change. And you also have to see at the beginning that you have to let go of some customers. So at the beginning, your churn might even increase if you start employing that method. But based on the responses you get from the customers and based on the responses they gave you on the questionnaire before, you will know whether it's a good intention churn or a bad intention churn. I think that helps. I don't know if I answered fully the question.
No, so when I think about that, you said that, you asked this question, like how disappointed would they, if Emarsys would not be anymore, and all the ideas and all the like ideal customers and such. And I guess you don't just send that questionnaire once. I think after they reach 6 months, you send it some other time. And how do you decide what cadence do you send it out?
Well, actually, I think the maximum is half a year when you can repeat that. You can do. I would say you run it once a year, the full base questionnaire once a year, and then every quarter you can have a small sample just to test if you're going into the right direction. But the one big questionnaire for your whole base once a year, and then quarterly small tests.
Thanks.
Just to momentarily come back to the question of Barnabas about customers who cannot really decide if, or they don't know if they will be disappointed or not. I would add that actually every customer is clear about if they want product or not. Maybe they need to be forced to realize it because the customer always know if they want it or not. Maybe some force pushing them to clearly come up with the answer is good or right. Of course, it shouldn't be felt like a pressure. For the questionnaire fix, it would be maybe beneficial to provide a section for free text answers, but of course that needs extra effort to evaluate depending on if that is available or not. That is absolutely at the questionnaire author. But the point I would like to take is the customer always know if they want the product or not. Maybe you need to force a bit them to be clear with themselves, because sometimes they are really not that much clear with that, but they will always know it.
Well, actually, I have to disagree with that. And I give you an example of myself today. I downloaded an app to my phone. It was a car simulator game. And well, actually, I downloaded it because, I don't know, I had 30 minutes and I was bored. And I was just searching for something, and it seemed to be right. I downloaded it, I played with it, I deleted it because it was nudging me to pay extra money to get up in the ranks, and it was so annoying that I needed to delete it even before my 30 minutes expired. So I wasn't sure that I need that product. I wanted something, a good game that takes away my free time, but I wasn't sure. And after experimenting, I knew that it wasn't my product. So that's...
Yeah, but the question is coming when they are having the product, isn't it? So you were clear that you want to remove because the product is not what you expected or actually want to keep on to have. So it is just correct.
Yeah, maybe I was too strict with them. I don't know. I don't know, but yes.
Okay, that's all.
Okay, any more questions? I can see one. Yeah.
Yeah, I have another one. So you mentioned that I don't sell to the customer who are not your fit. And I think most of us would like that, but we are not the people who sell to customers. So how do you manage that, and how do you get the buy-in from sales?
That's good. If it's your own company, you just talk to them and they accept. In any other case, that's a hard decision. Well, actually, I like to talk about product-led companies. There are not as many as they claim. So actually, you have to sit down with the management, have to present the results of your measurement. I hope that you can do the measurement without them agreeing. You can have the data. You can bring them facts about other companies being successful with that, and they can give you a chance to see if it works. And if they are committed, only then can it work. And then, of course, at the beginning, there will be some sacrifices on the way that, of course, you have to get in some other customers you don't want to. But even in my optimal case, 40% is in love with you and 60% is not really. So that's the best case I can reach in the scenarios. There will be always those customers who you don't want, but they will be there. You just want to keep it as low as possible.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, we still have a couple of more minutes. But if there are no more questions, then...
there is one raised hand now.
Oh, okay. Give me a sec.
So thank you very much. My question would be, how would you distinguish B2B from B2C way of doing all this?
Well, actually, B2B, you don't have a really big customer base, at least in terms of numbers. So we tend to have a couple of thousand customers. Well, not talking about Microsoft, of course, or companies like them, but not all companies are like Microsoft. So you would find in B2B typically fewer customers. So you can really scan your whole customer base there, and you can have a stronger relationship with the customers, because I suppose if you are in the B2B business, you would be talking to your customers very frequently through user interviews, testing, general satisfaction, etc. So you would know your most influential customers. You don't only need to rely on a few sentences they write to your questionnaire, but you can go into details. You can go to that customer, ask why they answered this, etc. So it gives you more chance to understand. And in B2C, you get tons of responses. So it will not be difficult to get 50 answers. If it is, then change the market or the product. So it will be another discussion. You rely on tons of customers providing you that little data which is in the questionnaire, and you can always be quicker in A/B testing, for example. Not with that questionnaire, but in general in B2C markets, you have to be you get to know customer responses quickly.
Okay, thank you very much, Bálint, for your presentation. It was very insightful. And let me introduce the next presenter, who is András Juhász. And he will be talking about frameworks and mental models for feature ranking. András is a product manager at Emarsys, where he works on a SaaS marketing cloud's marketing automation efforts. Previously, he worked in various sectors, gaining experience in digital marketing, project management, and agile transformation. He is passionate about great user experiences, product strategy, and outcome-focused delivery. András, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the intro. Let me quickly share the screen. And please raise your hands if you can see it.
Can see it.
Great. So I chose this topic because I think it's a very much discussed topic, the topic of feature ranking and how do we actually prioritize features, some feature over the others. So, and I purposefully chose this forest background here because to me, feature ranking is a bit like a forest. If you look out at the outside of the forest, it's nice, it's calm, it's green. You would love to go there. It's a very good thing to do. It's a very good thing to go there. But if you're in the forest, you start to see these small things. Let's say maybe you like to hang there and maybe you can spend a couple of nights in a tent in a forest, but you wouldn't want to live there. You see the ground, you see all the mud, you see some bugs, some of them are friendly, some of them are not so friendly. So inside the forest, it's not that all great, at least for long periods of time, at least for myself. So this is the kind of like similarity that I would like to highlight. And also in the forest, without proper navigation, you can get lost. And to me, feature ranking is also something that you can really get lost to because there are a lot of frameworks, a lot of mental models. And are you doing RISE? Are you doing Moscow? Are you doing actually any feature ranking model at your company? Or how is this topic standing? So who am I? I think Zoli did a great intro. Like in a nutshell, I'm a digital marketer turned project manager, turned delivery manager, turned product manager. So I always had a relationship with product. I think it just like, it has changed how I'm like related to products. Earlier at my career, I was using products and I was coordinating efforts to use product. Now I'm more close to product management and actually delivering experiences, delivering customer-based outcomes. And if we talk about this topic, I think the first question that we need to kind of answer that why do we actually need prioritization? And for that, I have a simple reason. Because in most of the cases, you have much more ideas and capacity to deliver them. Let's say if you wouldn't have to care about prioritization, let's just say that you have 10 ideas, or let's say you have 100 ideas, and you have a development team. And if you don't want to prioritize, you can just say to them that, okay, let's develop the first 10 ideas. Why not? We can get rid of prioritization. We don't have to argue about which to do first, just do the first 10. Would it work? Probably not, at least in most use cases. And I think to me, prioritization is about solving the biggest problems. Solving the biggest problems for customers, solving the biggest problem in some cases to development teams, if some products are facing internally like an internal framework or something like that. So it's all about reacting to problems. You're not prioritizing, at least on the first round, solutions, but you're talking about problems, and then you're talking about what are the potential solutions for that. You do research, hopefully at least you do research, you do some kind of validation, you have a design. Maybe with that design or prototype, you can go back to your customers, you ask them about how they like it, and if they approve it, and if they like it, then you go ahead with the chosen solution. And why do you do that? It's easy. Why do you do that? So people continue to pay for us. If you have an existing product, you want to do this, as Bálint, I think, greatly highlighted, that you want paying customers. And if you are building a new product, let's say from a scratch, then you want people to start paying for you. And economically, that's as simple as that. And in the next slides and in the next sections, I would like to show you some of the prioritization methods, what I like, what I used before, and also after then talk about a bit about the reality, because it's not just theory in practice, and you just cannot take usually the prioritization methods and just apply them and then everybody's happy. So after talking about the reality, I will also show you some of the practical use cases, practical methods, how you can approach feature prioritization, feature ranking, even if you don't have an Excel sheet to calculate all the score or all that thing that you need for ranking features. So first about ranking models. And one of my favorite is the Kano model, which tells you about a few things. It's mainly about two axes, and one axis on the horizontal axis, it's about execution. You can either do poor execution in something or excellent or something in between. That's one. And then you have the satisfaction axis, the vertical one. You can either create low satisfaction or high satisfaction, or similarly, anything in between. And if you're talking about specific product features, you have 5 categories that you can kind of put every feature to one of the categories at least, based on what your customers are saying, and based on what you see on the market. Let's start with the attractive one. Attractive ones are usually these nice to have ones when you're talking about product features, when even if you do a poor execution, the customer will be happy. The customer will say that, oh, wow, such a nice thing to do, this tagging or this coloring or something like that. And if you improve your execution, then it will just raise the satisfaction. But it's not something that to be expected. It's not something that must be part of the MVP. It's something nice to have, let's say. Then you have the performance products or performance product attributes. If you, let's say, talk about electric vehicles like Tesla, if you think about what is the range of these electric vehicles, how far they can go, it's purely a performance metric. The better they are, the more you will like that vehicle. It's as simple as that. Then we can talk about the green ones, the basic ones. Even if you do about basic feature poor execution, that will just provide a low satisfaction. You want to nail the basics, and when you're looking for an MVP, technically you want to find these basic features that will still provide like a medium satisfaction or something at least to be accepted by the customers using your product. But probably you won't like probably it won't result to wows and like wow, like and similar reactions. Then we have the indifferent features. Either if you do a poor execution or either if you do an excellent execution, it just doesn't make sense. Customers are not caring about it. You can tweak it in any way you want, but even if you invest time, customers won't be happier than they were before. For products or for product features that are indifferent, probably you shouldn't invest too much time into that, because if you are developing them, if you are raising the levels of execution, it wouldn't make a sense, or it wouldn't make a difference. Then the last one is actually the reverse product features. The more you do of them, the less your customers will like that. So if you do, let's say, if you do some changes in your product, and in most of the surveys it comes back as like something that the customers doesn't want, you shouldn't increase that. You should maybe decrease that or even remove it. And that's how this Kano model actually works and how it builds up based on these two axes. And one thing that I think you should know, that how you can tell what feature is which. And for that, you really need to answer just two simple questions and with 5 options. And it's something that also Bálint has talked about before. And just give me a minute. So how do you feel if you have the feature? Do you like it? Do you expect it? You don't care? You can still kind of tolerate it, or you dislike it. You don't want that feature to be there. That's the first question you should ask. And the second question here, how do you feel if you don't have the feature? This is what was Bálint highlighted, was highlighting in the previous presentation. Do your customers actually like if they don't have the feature? That's probably something of a reverse that you should remove from your product. If they very much dislike it, that's hopefully something that you should keep. And once you have these 2 responses for a specific feature, you can put them to a matrix. There is the dysfunctional part, so the feature is not present, and there is the functional part. So what are the responses that your customers has given you if the feature is existing and they have it? And based on this, you have 5 categories, as discussed before. You have the basic, you have the performance-related ones, you have the attractive ones that are kind of nice to have ones, you have the reverse that you should avoid or even reduce, and you have the indifferent ones, where customers are not really moved by having the feature or not having the feature. So probably you shouldn't invest too much time into those. And of course, at the top left and the bottom right corners, there are these question marks. So if your customers said that you dislike not having the feature, but also dislike having the feature, that's an answer that you cannot make sense of. Maybe you had like something bad in, something bad in this survey. Maybe your customers didn't understand the question. That's something that you actually just cannot interpret. So this is the essentials of RISE. And I plan to share some of the materials where you can go deeper in these prioritization methods after the session. So pay attention if you receive an email, if you want to just get to know this model, or if you're not familiar already with this. And the next one is the RISE method. The RISE method is really simple. I think that's why many product managers are like to do it. And it's also used as an ICE method. It's like an abbreviation of 4 easy words. It's reach multiplied by impact, multiplied by confidence, divided by effort. And then you have the RISE score. What it means that how many customers will you reach with this given feature. That's usually a number. Second, what is the impact you're expecting from this feature? It can be a score from 1 to 10, but in most of the cases, it should be something predefined. And then, what is the confidence you have with this product feature? How much research did you do? Are you confident that this is something that must be done, or you just had an idea and you just throw it off, like throw it to a product manager? Like selling more SIM cards. Are you confident in that, or you just want to sell more SIM cards? And also, in what comes in many product prioritization methods, the effort. How much time it takes to deliver that. So with the RISE score, you want to find, in most cases, the quick wins. You want to find those features that without significant effort can be impactful, and you're confident enough, and you can reach most of your customers. And once we discuss RISE, let's head over to a similar product prioritization framework, the weighted shortest job first. It's part of the recommendation coming from Scaled Agile Framework. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with that, but it's actually very comparable, let's say, to RISE. You have two components here. One of the components is the cost of delay, which comes from the user business value, time criticality, and risk reduction and/or opportunity enablement. What are these things? User business value is something that your business gives to you. It's better if it's something predefined, so also like a score from 1 to 10. So they cannot just like give you 100 when you have like a score from 1 to 10 to like kind of hijack this method. And what is the time criticality? Is it something urgent? Is there a legal pressure to do this? Is there like a security audit coming, or is there any reason that you should hurry up the development of this feature? And the third component in the cost of delay is the risk reduction. If you are doing this, are you reducing the risk of a fine? Are you reducing the risk of some security incidents or something like that? Or is there any opportunity that you would create with that? Let's say you have like let's say you have a call center receiving customer calls every day. If you develop this feature, will you take off some of the work hours from the call center because you introduced something that was previously only possible via the phone? Then from tomorrow, they will be also able to do it on the website or in the mobile app. So from this, if you add these things up, that is the cost of delay. And also in this method, you divide it with the job duration or job size. So that's similar to the effort, what we discussed in the RISE model. And that is the weighted shortest job first. And as in the previous model, it's something that prefers quick wins, something that prefers impactful features that are not so much time or not so much effort to deliver. And I think it's nice to talk about this here, but let's come back to the reality. Usually we are not talking about these prioritization methods most of the time. And there are some difficulties when you put all these methodologies or all this factual information into the reality. First, you have to sell the concept of prioritization to your management, to all the product managers. If you're the only one who agrees that this is good, but nobody else agrees that you should use this model or that model, then it wouldn't work. Then there is this nice hippo, the highest paid person's opinion. You can kind of create a nice framework, you can operate a nice framework discussing with and agreeing with all the product managers. But if your CEO or CMO comes to you and says to you that, hey, cool that you're doing this, you should do this instead. And if you're forced to do it, then probably you're doing something wrong. Maybe you don't provide all your data that you have to the CEO or to the top management, or there is some misunderstanding in priorities. And on operative level, there are the days of the difference in expertise for the team or other team issues like sicknesses, holidays, and many things like that. That can still affect your velocity, that can still affect how much you can take into one sprint or one cycle, or how much you can actually deliver in a year. Then there is the topic of technical debt. All the shortcuts that you, your team, or somebody else made in the past that are not really optimal and should be removed. But of course, you cannot work on technical debt all the time because then you wouldn't provide any value to your customers. And then there is also an expression I like to use. This is the product debt. Similar to technical debt, product debt is all the bad decisions or shortcuts that product-wise it was made. Maybe it was made by you before, maybe it was made by someone else, let's say 5 years ago. But this is all the things that you want to change or you don't really agree with. And I think if we are talking about prioritization and if we are talking about how does this work, some people say that changes are annoying. Because, oh yeah, the CEO said that we have to do this, or there is this security thing that we need to fix as soon as possible, or some other incidents happened. But I think this is the wrong mentality, because I think changes usually are natural. And as a product manager, you should be able to handle changes and you should be prepared for changes. If changes are not happening, probably somebody is not doing their job, or probably you are cut off from your actual customers or from the market. After we discussed this, I would like to bring you quickly two concepts of, let's say, more realistic approach, how you can approach product challenges and feature ranking challenges. And one of them is the concept of confidence and reversibility. If you are thinking about one feature, usually you have some amount of confidence. It can be low, it can be high if you have a lot of data and research behind it, but you have something. And it's also an important question to ask if you are, like, let's say, developing a new button, developing a completely new product, or launching a completely new platform. For these things, I think different levels of confidence are required. If you are just changing a color, you probably don't want to ask like 200 people what if they think about the green button or red button. You can just like A/B test it and people will tell. But if you are launching a product or a brand new major feature, probably you should go to your customers, at least some of them, even if you are B2B or B2C, and ask them what they think before you actually launch it. And the other concept is reversibility. How easy is to go back and fall back on the decision that you made? Is it something that you can actually reverse? Or is it something that once you've done it, or once you made a decision, it's not possible to go back? Let's say if you're removing code or refactoring something and dropping all the code, or making a breaking change that you just cannot take back. Sometimes you can technically take it back, but it would be too expensive to do it. And if you put these two concepts also to a matrix, you can see where you should be in terms of confidence, in terms of confidence and in terms of reversibility. If you have low confidence, probably you shouldn't do things that it's hard to reverse. If you have high confidence, that's usually needed to do breaking changes, because you cannot just easily go back. Reversibility is also called one-way door or two-way door decisions, and reference us like that. Because on some doors you can walk two ways and you can walk back if you messed up something. On some others, you simply cannot. The door closes. And I think my last thought to this topic is that I hope you are kind of starting to sense that it's a really big forest where you can get lost, and there are a lot of priorities and a lot of methods that you can select from. And I was just talking about three and another concept. So my advice is that in situations when you're feeling overwhelmed, or in situations where you cannot actually show a nice Excel or nice calculation, just use common sense and ask some basic questions that should be at least on a high level. You should be able to tell at least on a high level if it's actually something that you want to do and your customers are willing to pay for. First, ask the question, is it aligned to the product vision? If not, that's a clearly no, or there is some problems with the product vision. Is it impactful? Is it affecting a lot of customers? Is it making a positive change? Is it having a customer or business impact or any other meaningful impact? Is there evidence to support it? Did you do your homework? Did you do some research here? Or you're just like having and playing with an idea that somebody said, but actually no customer has ever requested it? Then, if you already said yes to this, then ask the question that is it time critical? Because if it is, maybe you should put it higher on your backlog. Maybe you should like address this issue sooner. And to figure it out if it's really time critical, ask this question: that does it work to drop what you're currently working on? So if somebody comes to you with a really urgent feature need that should be developed right now, and probably that's like a concept you don't know because it never happened before, but if somebody comes to you with this, does it work for the team to drop what they are currently working on, to kind of switch context, to leave the code unfinished, to have all the work unfinished and to focus on something new. Does it worth it? Or it's like, let's say, the second thing after what you're working on, because it's not worth to drop this, what you're working on. And my last advice, that with this feature prioritization, you can really get into the game that you're scoring some things and you're looking at the nice rank, or looking at what is the top that you should focus on and what is at the bottom of the backlog. But also not just look at the score, and not just look at what you prioritize and how you do that, but also look at what you prioritize. And we were talking about Dan Olsen before in Bálint's presentation, and I also brought a concept from one of his presentations. Some time ago, NASA, the space agency in the US, developed a pen, needed to develop a pen, because with regular ball pens, there are a lot of issues, at least in zero gravity. You have to turn them in a certain direction to work. You need air, you need gravity. So the actual ball pen was something that was not working in the space, just as it was. So NASA developed a space pen and spent around like $1 million for developing that. They had a clear problem, they had a clear goal, and they invested money and invested resources in order to do that. And on the other hand, this was the USA approach. On the other hand, Russia also developed their alternative because they needed something and they faced the same problem. And the special pen, actually, what they developed was a pencil. It was cheap, it was easy to use, and maybe it was not like satisfying all the criteria of this advanced space pen, but it was working. So this is the last slide of my presentation. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'm waiting for that. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, András. Do we have any questions? Feel free to raise your hands if you have. By the time, let me ask one question. So maybe I'm a little bit confused. How do we get out of this forest? And actually, we were trying one of these techniques, and it was RISE score. And I was wondering, what did we do wrong? Because what we were experiencing is that the order of the features that we are trying to ranking is highly depends on the scores itself, the reach, the impact. So how we are defining them. Are we using MRR or client cohorts, or so there are so many possibilities to create scores, and each time so actually it felt like a magic list, and it just didn't felt right. That's the right order. So I don't know whether you have any advice or experience with this, or anyone else in the call.
I think what I would say as a first thought, that I think you are very much right, that you should have some standards if you want to introduce some kind of feature ranking. So if you want to talk about reach, that's probably something that is given. Let's say number of users that you will reach with this feature. If you talk about impact, yeah, there is something that should be standardized. Maybe it's revenue, maybe it's a score from 1 to 10, maybe it's something, but all the people who are contributing to this score should use the same standards and should use the same scale. Confidence is also something like that. Probably you can have confidence from 0% to 100%. And is it you, the product manager, who is prioritizing the confidence, or is it somebody else who is giving?
Yeah, the whole product team was involved, actually, the developers, UX experts, and product managers as well. And the other problem is that impact is highly subjective. So
I think there is no perfect way to rank features, and probably RISE not the perfect way either. I think once you have a set of standards, and once you have an agreement with at least your stakeholders, your team, maybe the upper management, who is maybe the upper product management, that's a good start. You shouldn't expect perfect scoring, because there will always be somebody that wants to just hijack this process and say that, okay, do my features and I give it a 10. But then you should be able to challenge it as a product manager once you see the requirement or once you see the problem. That's, hey, it's not a 10. It's like best at a 2 in case of impact. But yeah, I think it's an interesting topic. So if anybody else have any similar experiences, I'm also eager to learn. Just raise your hand or go with any emoji that you can see.
Or you can drop your question in the chat as well.
Okay.
So I'm wondering, how are you doing it at Emarsys? Because you gave us a lot of theory, but I'm really curious, how do you do it?
Yeah, in Emarsys, we don't have like a set of standards. We have product areas, and in these product areas, let's say product pods, we have product teams. And at the moment, there is a prioritization on company level or platform level, that what are at each month and every cycle, what are the top priorities, what you should focus on. And that's decided by product directors, which influenced by product managers. So it's usually like some democratic game, that what is the end-to-end use case that you want to deliver. And on product team level, if you are not included in this top priority list, let's say top 3, then you have the chance to work on your roadmap items. So if you're not affected these big end-to-end use cases, you can still follow your internal vision and internal roadmap. But of course, that's already something that should be discussed on with higher levels. You should have a roadmap and you should know what you are focusing on.
Yeah, so it happens on 2 levels. So if you don't have to contribute to the high-level product priorities, then you can do your own business, and you can prioritize within your area. There are many products in the area, and the whole product team with product director and product managers, and they have the autonomy to decide which process they use to prioritize their features.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, so we were kind of like András mentioned, there are a lot of tools and everyone can decide which one to use, but it should be, and this is my opinion, it should be unified within an area if we are prioritizing the features of the whole area and not doing it on a product level.
Yeah, and I think one important aspect in that, if you're introducing something new, before you start to use it, you need to convince others that it's actually working. Because if you won't be able to do that, then you will have nice RISE scores or nice weighted shortest job first scores, but others won't accept it. You will just like, okay, nice numbers, what are these?
Because you also have to convince them that it actually makes sense, and maybe we weren't persistent enough, and if we had figured out better scores that to make this model work, then we would still use it, but it happened the other way around. Okay, we have a question from Steve. Give me a sec. Okay, now you can unmute yourself.
Thanks. Do you use the concept of value to the business or value to your customers as one of the lead decision-making items, or are you always discussing priorities about features in another way? My understanding is that, you know, apart from one, there are dependencies on the features that have to be put in place in sequence sometimes. But then the second thing is that value to the business or value to the customer is the next highest priority decision-making item.
Yeah, I think it's a very important question. And every time you talk about features, you shouldn't just talk about features, but you should talk about the problems behind it. Because if you are just pushing out features without actual problems, then you're a feature factory. And that's not something most teams would like to do, because then you don't know if there is any customer value, and you don't know if you are actually addressing any concerns regarding hierarchy. yeah, I think it's also a valid question that is there anything that you should do before you actually deliver that second feature? Maybe there is a dependency, or maybe there is something, some upgrades, technical upgrades that you need to do in order to, like a technical enable, in order to do that second feature.
I've found in the past that very often your backlog can be filled by automatic decisions, and then you don't have to go up the hierarchy to have somebody make a decision for you. So ownership stays with the people who own the product on a day-to-day basis, and not just the hippos, as was in the presentation, because they can interfere with decision making whenever they like.
Yeah, and regarding hippos, I think it's also a very important point that you as a product manager, or all product managers, should have respect in the organization. Because if you're not respected, then anything they show to others, it will be just disregarded, or it will be just like, yeah, he's talking about something, but we shouldn't care about that. If you have respect, then you have some power to enforce, let's say, feature ranking, enforce more and present more your own decisions, and people will more agree and believe in you.
Yes, and that follows if you're using frameworks such as Agile, and then delivering through Scrum. That way of working, the way you describe, it follows some of the principles and practices that are described in frameworks such as Agile and obviously Scrum.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting topic. We can go really deep, and that's why I use this analogy of forest, because you can really get lost in these all things.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I can give you an example how we do this in Ekata. We currently work in a way that the high-level management, C-levels and VPs are finding out a direction where to go. They set a goal that they want more use case specific products, or they want to create more Swiss Army knife like products, or just want to go to a new market or not. And based on that, all the teams are finding out project ideas, and these will be the key projects. Most of the team's efforts are going into the key projects. Key projects are also projects that are having huge dependencies, so multiple teams needs to work on it. And yeah, I think, yeah, around 60-70% of the power of each team goes into these key projects, and we have 30 to 40% to spend on backlog items, like enhancing, cleaning up some stuff, making the building system faster, and things like that.
Actually, sometimes this idea to keep up some percentage of your total effort for support tasks or operational tasks does make sense, because otherwise they happen anyway. So you will end up, so if you don't have a spare effort for that, you will end up not finishing the backlog you planned for iteration or the cycle.
Yeah, I think that's also a very valid point, that you anyways shouldn't plan with 100% of your capacity, because there is, like, in most of the cases, bug fixes that you wouldn't forecast. There are some release tasks, there are some new alerts or incidents that might happen. So if you are planning your things fully, then there is a really high chance that you might run out of your scope, or you might run out of your time frame.
Yeah. Yeah, but you still need the most important skill of product manager to say no in order to be able to keep your iteration or cycle planned only for 80% or something like that, unless it's a cultural thing in your company. Okay. If we don't have any more questions, thank you very much, András, for your presentation and for everyone being here and for the questions. And if you visit this link, you can give us feedback about this whole event, the Product Management Night Budapest, the second edition, so that we can improve and next time we can do things better. Or if you liked it, give us a thumbs up in this form. Do we have anyone else to say, Botond? What do you think?
Yeah, so if you could fill out this very quick feedback form, that would be awesome. It would really help us to be better next time. I shared the link in the chat, so you can simply click on it. If you would have any topics to talk about, or just or a presentation idea or something like that, please find us. We included our contact details in the feedback form as well. So yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, so everyone is very welcome who want to be a presenter next time. Please reach out to us. And thank you very much for your attentions. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.